This week on the BackTable Podcast.
The main take-home messages is that it ain't easy, and there's not going to be this one-size-fits-all. You really need to be flexible. You need to find what do you love, what matters most to you, and where does your time need to go, and really build your life around that. You know, we got to ask lots of questions and communicate with your partner. Communicate with your partner often, touch base, still make that time for each other, and really build your own village. Outsource, ask for help where you need it, and don't give up because it does get easier. And as you all mentioned, there's seasons, and there's always summer after winter. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the BackTable Podcast, your source for all things urology. You can find all previous episodes of our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and on BackTable.com.
Now, a quick word from our sponsors.
Advance your urology practice with UroAdvance by Boston Scientific. Every day, Boston Scientific strives to provide best-in-class products, education that empowers patients, and unwavering support that enables care teams to be at the top of their field. Visit bostonscientific.com/UroAdvance to explore all that's available. UroAdvance, advancing urology for providers and patients.
Now, back to the show.
I'm your host, Dr. Helen Bernie from Indiana University. Welcome to this BackTable SWIU episode, where I'm very excited to introduce our guest today, two rising stars in our field, Dr. Katie Amin from the Desai Sethi Urological Institute at the University of Miami, and Dr. Peter Bajic from the Cleveland Clinic Department of Urology. How's it going, guys?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having us, Helen.
I am so excited to have both of you because I know both of you outside of work as well. And y'all are two of my great friends. And so on today's episode of BackTable Urology, we're diving into a topic that resonates deeply with many of us in this field, which is navigating life as a dual physician couple. And we're actually going to explore the unique challenges and rewards of being part of a dual physician couple. Because let's face it, medicine is demanding. It's rewarding, and oftentimes it's all-consuming. And when both partners are physicians, the dynamics can be incredibly complex, from either long hours, from call schedules, career advancement, to even raising families or maintaining your personal time. The balance is really challenging, but it's not impossible. So we're going to go into the strategies, the struggles, and successes that come with balancing two demanding careers while building a life together. So whether you're currently in a dual physician relationship, like we all are, or you're thinking about entering one, or maybe you're just curious about how this beautiful chaos works, this conversation is for you. So let's get started, everyone. So this introduction is going to be a little different. Instead of all of the accolades and where we are, I'm going to talk about that I'm married to another urologist, and he's at Indiana University with me. And we've actually been married. It'll be 10 years this year. And we have 3 little boys. So we have an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 4-year-old. Katie, tell me about your family.
So I am married to a gastroenterologist. He's interventional GI. He does ERCPs and EUSs, and he's kind of like the interventional radiology of gastroenterology. So he does a lot of procedures. He has a half day of clinic once a month. So he's mostly kind of in the operating room, I guess you would say. And so we've been together for 15 years. We've been married for 9 years. And we have a 5-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old boy.
Oh, Peter, what about you guys?
So my wife is an ophthalmologist, also at Cleveland Clinic. She focuses primarily on cataract surgery and cosmetics. And we have a 3-year-old girl and a 1-year-old girl.
Oh, that's so cute. So clearly there's a lot going on in both of y'all's households and very, very busy. So I'm going to start with, let's go back to when it was just the two of you, either before or right after the marriage bliss. Did any of you have discussions kind of about like financials, or are you going to be on the same page about your lifestyle habits, where you're going to work, things like that?
Yeah, I can take this. So, my husband's from Vancouver, Canada, and I'm from Buffalo, New York. So we're from very different places in the country, in the world, and our families are in very different locations as well. And, and that being said, so location-wise, we weren't really tied to one place or the other. But my husband's name is Sunil, and his parents really always wanted us to move back to Canada. So when we were first dating and when we got married, the plan was for us to both move back to Canada. So we both took our Canadian boards. So I'm Canadian board certified. Flew to Ottawa, took my boards. It was a written portion, and then also a oral exam in Ottawa. So I was really proud of that. Really excited. I did my fellowship in Seattle because we wanted to try out the Pacific Northwest after we met in New York City. We moved out to Seattle to try this location and, develop contacts to move to Canada. That was always the plan. And one would ask, you ended up in Miami, probably the furthest location that you could possibly be compared to Vancouver, Canada. But, we tried it out, and I'm so glad that we did. And also the Canadian systems, we just learned that the Canadian systems are very different, actually, for both of what we do, or both of our specialties. So urology is very different in British Columbia with access to robots and the billing system and, just how busy you can be because, there's only so many cases that can go and can be billed to the government. So there's all those little nuances. And then for gastroenterology, there's different nuances as well. So then we kind of were looking around and ended up in Miami. So, the location thing, you never know. And I think I don't have any of the answers. And you kind of have to roll with the punches too, because sometimes you have a plan and that plan doesn't always work out. And then to your second point about finances. So my husband doesn't have any loans, never had any loans. He comes from an Indian family that, just would basically, they would do anything, they would live in a shack and then to make sure that their, kids never had loans. But I have a lot. And so that was always a one thing or the other. But I think have those frank conversations with your partner, and nothing is going to be perfect. You're never going to match and be the same when you're, going and talking about those tough conversations, I think. And that's, if someone's in medicine or not in medicine.
Now you bring up a really great point. Peter, what about you guys?
So we actually met when I was an intern in Chicago at Loyola, and she was a fourth-year med student there. We had a mutual friend that connected us. So we've been married now for almost 9 years. But actually, because she was ophthalmology, she finished her residency. I started residency first, and then she finished med school, started residency, finished residency, got a job, worked for a couple of years, and I was still in residency because urology. So she was actually working for a couple of years. I was going to do general urology private practice with a focus in men's health. That was what I wanted to do. And it wasn't until my research year, which for us was late, it was a PGY 5, that I kind of got really excited about research. And I was like, you know what? I want to do academics. I want to teach. I want to do research. And then one of my mentors was like, if you want to do men's health, you should probably do a fellowship. So one more year in Chicago for a fellowship. And then ultimately I got this great job at Cleveland Clinic. And so that kind of brought us back to Cleveland. My wife was from Chicago. So really it did kind of uproot her from her job. And we thankfully were able to secure a great job for her here. So that was kind of the story about how we got from meeting to where we are now. It was definitely some tough decisions. She had never lived anywhere but Chicago before, but we both kind of agreed that at that phase of our career, to have an opportunity to be in a really prestigious institution and have a lot of opportunity. One of my mentors once told me that, fish always grow to the size of the tank. So get yourself in as big of a tank as possible and seize the opportunities that you have. And it really, I think, paid dividends for both of us. So that was kind of the story about that. As far as finances and stuff, I mean, I would say in our relationship, we definitely both try to gravitate or actually, go towards some of the tasks and responsibilities that we have based on what our strengths are. I would say I'm probably more of the finance money guy. So I try to just kind of manage as much of that as possible and obviously loop her in as much as I can. But, I try to be a little bit more in charge of that stuff. And she's got other things that she takes the lead on. So I think it's really important to find that balance and find ways to support each other. So there's not too much being disproportionately dumped on one partner.
No, you bring up a good point. I think urology is such a small world. I met my husband at a urology residency interview dinner. So we were actually in Chicago as well. And we both met and just hit it off. And the rest was history. And we ended up doing 6 years long distance while we were in residency together. We both were in 6-year programs. He was at Cornell and I was at the University of Rochester. And so we got married my 4th year of residency. We had our first kid our chief year while we were still apart. So, when we were actually thinking about jobs and like next steps, we were already married and a family, and we weren't even living together yet. So, we were trying to think, where are we going to go? What kind of a job do we want? And as we started interviewing different places, you're looking at contracts and you're thinking of things that are really important to you and as a couple. Were there specific things that you guys thought about as a couple when y'all were selecting jobs, like specifically things that maybe other dual physician couples should think about as special considerations when you're doing contract negotiation or other things like that? Or was it really just kind of finding that right fit for you guys?
Yeah, I think for us, we both wanted to be in academics. So that's always a challenge. You kind of have to think about, I think the first thing that you need to think about is, are we looking at big institutions or private practice where you could look at small groups or large LUGPA groups and things like that. So kind of hone in on that. For us, when we are looking at different places, actually, we, interviewed in New York, Miami, California. So we did interview broadly and we didn't have ties with family because our family is very spread out to begin with. But what was important for us is just the advancements that we could have at the institution and the opportunity at the institution. So University of Miami the opportunities are tremendous here. It's just such a growing institute right now. And just really the momentum is amazing here. So that's what we were promised, and they absolutely delivered for that. So I think that's what we were looking at was just the opportunity for growth for both of us. Because sometimes there's a strong department, like if your significant other is not in the same department, maybe one department is a little bit stronger than the other. Your partner can kind of feel that if they get the short end of the stick. So that's important to think about as well.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to find the right fit or even to know what the thing is that you're looking for when you're first getting started. I think that for me, it was kind of finding a leader that I felt like I could really jive with and align with, that would support me and was invested. And also feeling like the group of those I'd be working most closely with are people that I'm going to get along with, because obviously you're going to spend a lot of time with these people. And I think we were really lucky that Cleveland Clinic had great teams and leaders and departments in both of our specialties. And it was highly convenient that the chair of urology at the time was married to one of the ophthalmologists in the same institution, which is what my wife's obviously specialty is. So that was kind of an easy way, at least, to initiate that conversation. Their chair was like super supportive. They didn't have a job or a role, and they kind of had created one for her. And it was just, I think, a great opportunity for her. She was very motivated and, really created a great practice and a niche for herself in her own department. So, I think that worked out well for us. Those kinds of opportunities are rare, and I think can't always necessarily find those. So I think you just have to communicate very well and figure out what's the best situation for your family. Another thing that we definitely took into consideration as we were considering other jobs in the area, because we knew we wanted to have kids, was the parental leave. And Cleveland Clinic had just implemented, they were one of the first that implemented 3 months of maternity leave, one month for the other parent. So I think honestly, for us, I don't know how we would have done it without that. We're blessed to have our parents nearby, but still it was very important for us to have that time with not only with our kids, but also to support one another early on. And, having kids, and it's just a lot. Everybody has different things that are priorities and that they value and are important, and what you look for in your first job may not be what you need down the road and several years later. But we were very lucky, and I feel very blessed for that.
To piggyback off of this for the paternity leave. So because this is a SWIU podcast, I just want to put this out there that the leave policy can change. You just have to ask, and you have to advocate for yourself as well. So actually, two things about that is that I had my daughter when I timed it very nicely. I don't know how I did this, but she was born July 18th, the July of when I graduated fellowship, right? So to the day I graduated, then my daughter was born. That worked out really, really well. So my maternity leave was kind of just moving. I moved my 5-week-old daughter from Seattle to Miami, but that was fine. And that being said, my partner came in and she was pregnant. And so University of Miami had a policy that For paternity leave, you had to be working at University of Miami for, I think, a certain period before you could receive paternity leave paid. And that was changed. Even what she was pregnant and she had signed on, and started, and just because she asked, and she actually went to faculty council and everything. And so that policy was changed. And that being said, because for dual physician couples, if you do have a same employer, you should ask about both of you getting leave, or maybe sometimes there's a situation that arises where only one person would get that 12 weeks because you have the same employer. And that can come up as well. So just questions that, that can arise if you both work for the same employee.
And I think it's so important to just, for those of us that are working at a place that feels so large, and I think it can feel very much like you're just kind of a cog in the wheel. But I do think that, and this goes back to having a supportive leader or having a good working relationship with your chair or, leader of your practice or whatever it is. I think sometimes even when you feel like you're kind of bound by these, I don't know, unmovable walls, that maybe sometimes they're more movable than you might realize, or that there might be ways around certain things. So definitely, just like in a relationship, good communication is so important. I think being willing to have those kinds of conversations, which sometimes could be difficult with your chair or whoever it is so important. And if you don't, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. If you don't ask, you may not get. So don't be scared to bring these things up, because so many of us in medicine at all levels have families and have been through this stuff. So not a sign of weakness to say, you know what, I really want to take some time off to be with my kid. I don't want to be regretting this 10, 20 years from now.
You both bring up such good points, and especially about communication. On my third child, when we were already both attending the Indiana University, the maternity policy was I could take up to 12 weeks, and I chose to take 10. And if I could give any advice back to anyone, I would say take the full 12 weeks, because you never get that time back. And, I couldn't do that when I was in residency or fellowship. I took 5 weeks off after a C-section when I was in residency. I took 6 weeks when I was after a C-section in fellowship, and had to have a third C-section, go figure, and I took 10 weeks. And if I could do anything different, I would have taken 12 weeks, because I think that time is so important. And Peter, to your point, my husband, our policy was that you could have paternity leave for 1 month. So Aaron thought, well, I'm going to split it up, and I'm going to take 1 week when you first have the baby, and then we'll wait a few weeks, let you get settled, because we'll have family over, and then I'll take the other 3 weeks when they all leave. And so he goes and takes the first week, and then found out that it all had to be consecutive and together. And so he never got to take the 3 weeks. And that was just a communication, right? We didn't clarify when you looked at the 4 weeks that it all had to be taken together and all at once. So it's definitely important to talk about these things and clarify them beforehand, so that you really can optimize and maximize your time together as a family. So speaking of family, I think, myself and Aaron, we don't have any family where we live here in Indiana. So all of our family are in different states. And so we really had to rely a lot on outside sources for childcare. Right now, childcare has really been the bane of our existence for everything with navigating our careers and being where we are. And right now, our current situation is we have a nanny that comes in the morning, because Aaron and I go to work, and then we have a nanny that comes and gets the kids ready for school. She makes sure that our 2 oldest are on the bus to go to kindergarten, 2nd grade, and then she takes the baby to preschool. And then she stays and helps with some house management organization stuff. And then in the evenings, we have 2 weeknights a week that we have 2 different babysitters. They're the same one. One's on a Monday and one's on a Wednesday. And they help us on those evenings picking up our kids, because those are usually the later days for my husband and I. And our kids have sports or games and practices that they have to go to after school. So maybe I'll get off work and I'll pick up the oldest and I'll take him to his basketball practice. And then she'll pick up the younger 2 and get dinner ready for them and help us. And then when we get home, then we'll get the bedtime routine ready. But it's no joke, trying to organize this chaos of who's getting the kids and where they're going. Can each of you kind of talk about what's your childcare situation like, and who helps you guys with the kiddos?
Yeah, so we don't have family in Miami either. So we pay a lot for help. So we dish out all the money. But I mean, you have to. So, we are just like you. We both do procedures. So we both have to be up and out the door pretty early. And also as part of academic, for better or worse, we have 7 a.m. meetings quite a bit too. So that being said, our nanny comes at 6:30 in the morning. My kids go to 2 different schools, so there's 2 different drop-offs. There's a lot of driving. And, we had, I'm so sad, but we had a unicorn nanny that was amazing. She was with us for 4 years and she left a month ago. So we are kind of in the thick of things of having a new person. And after 4 years, that person becomes part of your family. We would take her on vacation sometimes with us. She traveled with us to Europe, to Vancouver, all sorts of places. But then, even the grandparents get to know the nanny very well. So that was so nice. And, they really truly do become like family. And you want to treat your nanny like family, because then they feel, more responsible. They treat your kids like, how you would want to treat them, right? So I do think that's important. But then once they know that they're invaluable, they know it, and then they will kind of squeeze you. But sometimes, you have these conversations, and offline with, you and your spouse. We'll have these conversations, like, are we paying this nanny too much? She keeps asking for raises, or Miami was getting expensive and her rent was getting higher. And you are that person's employer. So, so you have to continue to pay her. If you're going away on vacation, she still needs that weekly paycheck because she has to pay her bills. So I think that's important concept to really understand. And it's not worth it to cut corners with that, because then you're not going to keep someone for a long time. So for what we do, we have a nanny right now, and it's kind of changed, but we have a nanny that is willing to do a split shift. So she comes 6:30 to 9:30. And then she actually kind of just like watches a little baby twice a week, but it's very flexible in the middle of the day. And then she'll come back 1:30 to 5 to drive around the kids, because we need a driver. That's the biggest thing, because our kids are just in so many activities: piano, martial arts, swimming, all those activities. So and then there's days off. My kids go to 2 different schools, so they don't have the same schedule. One's at like a all-girls Catholic school, the other one's at like a preparatory school. So even like religious holidays are different. Everything is different. So we need flexibility as well. So, all those things are so important. And then we have a backup person. You have to have many people. And I also want to give a plug and a shout out to undergrads. So we have really, we always like, kind of young, energetic nannies. And so, I think our main nanny has always been young, energetic, has some experience. But that being said, the people that fill in, if someone is sick or whatever it may be, are, even for babysitters at, on Fridays and Saturdays, we love our 20-year-old undergrads. They are amazing, and they have so much energy, and they kind of come with like fresh ideas, games to play with the kids. They know all the movies. So that's my plug. I think we underestimate them.
That's such a huge, important point too. We also had really good luck finding some nannies on some like the Facebook groups in your area where you live. Like we live in Indiana, so there's an Indiana or different suburbs like Carmel nanny group, things like that, where you can really find some very good nannies. But boy, is that point taken on when you find a good unicorn nanny, you take care of them and they really become family. And that's really where most nannies, will leave. As they leave, it's not even based on kids, because they love your family. They love the kids. They just want to feel valued, and they want to feel part of your family too. And if you do that, you can get really lucky. You can find a really great nanny, because we definitely have those too. And we're really fortunate, because you're right. They're the ones showing up every day, taking, care of your most prized possessions, your children, making sure that you can do the things that you do so that you can go to work, and that everyone's taken care of and dressed, and lunch boxes are ready, and their computers are in their bags for school, and that everything's ready to go. So such a good point. Peter, what do you guys do for childcare?
So I feel super blessed and spoiled to say that we have double grandmas in town. So I grew up in Cleveland, so my folks were super excited to have us back. And then when our first daughter was born in 2021, my mother-in-law actually moved, because she didn't really, everybody in her immediate family had moved out of Chicago. And she said, you know what, I just want to be close to my first grandkid. So that was kind of our childcare at the beginning. And then when we realized that at our parents' age, which our parents are a little bit older, it was physically a little bit more, I think, demanding than could be handled by them for as many hours as we needed a week, we actually decided to get an au pair. We had our first au pair from Spain, which was a great experience. You kind of have to have the right living situation for it because obviously they're living with you. Depending on the au pair, some of them, can be very involved in your life, which is kind of what we wanted. We wanted to have that experience and give that visitor to this country the cultural experience of being part of an American family. So we now are on our second au pair because usually they stay depending on what they want, either 1 year or 2 years. Both of our families are originally from the former Yugoslavia, so Serbia, essentially. And we decided because both of us are relatively bad at speaking our native language that we wanted to have an au pair from over there to help teach our kids. So this year we had an au pair from Montenegro, which speaks the same language. And so it's been good. I mean, that's basically our regular childcare, and then our moms kind of fill in the gaps. And I have a cousin who has a daughter that's a senior in high school that kind of pinch hits when we're out of town and need an additional person. But we've been very lucky that we have a lot of help in the area. There are certainly certain interesting dynamics that are involved when family is regularly involved in childcare. I think they're much less likely to listen to what we want as parents when they're volunteers and when they think they know best, which is, I think, moms in general. But certainly, I think the pluses outweigh the minuses. Maybe they get a little more screen time when grandma's around and things like that, but we manage. And I think the au pair program is really interesting. I mean, I think cost effectiveness wise, I think it's really great. I think it's an interesting experience to just get to know somebody from another country. But we've been very lucky. I think that sometimes you don't really know what you're going to get. And next thing you know, somebody's living in your house. And I think that can be difficult. But thankfully, like I said, we've been lucky that we've liked both of ours so far. And I think we're going to continue with this for the time being.
I'm so jealous because we tried the au pair route and our au pair wanted to leave a week into her arrival. She just got homesick and wanted to leave. And then we tried a second one and it just was not a good fit. So I'm so jealous because I have so many friends too that also have au pairs that are really wonderful fits. And they can do like Katie's nanny. They can do the kind of the split shifts too. So they work in the morning and then in the afternoon, they're able to enjoy their day or do whatnot and then come back in the evening. So that's a really great arrangement. I know that managing kids is so hard, but outside of childcare, it's how do you manage the household chores? Because when you have dual working parents, who's doing the laundry, who's doing the cooking, who's going grocery shopping, who's paying the bills, who's planning vacations or making sure the kids have their costumes for their dress up day at school and all of the other house issues, right? Like getting the HVAC checked on, etc. How does that work in your house, Peter?
I mean, I think you really have to outsource what you can within reason. Probably the best quality of life investment we've made is getting a cleaning lady. I don't know the last time I cleaned a toilet. It's just little stuff like that, when you find a good one and a good person that, works well for what your needs are, I think it's really priceless. So, there's a lot there to unpack. I think depending on what kind of house you have, we have a very old house. So I have to have a lot of contractors that manage various things. I have my HVAC guy, I have my gutters guy and all sorts of different things. So I grew up as kind of the mentality of just do it all yourself and you don't need anybody. But realistically, as you progress in your career, your time becomes more valuable and more valuable to others when they use your time, but even more valuable to yourself when you need that time to decompress and spend time with your kids, spend time with your partner. So you could spend your weekends and evenings doing housework and doing, various things. But, you have to figure out what the best mix is for you of what sorts of things you want to outsource and what sorts of things you actually get joy out of doing yourself. I learned the hard way when we were in training and wanted to do some renovations around our apartment and redo all of our floors. I was just oh yeah, I know how to do it myself. I'll just do it myself. And I ended up spending a year just destroying my hands every day. And it was never again, Now with kids in the picture, it's I would rather spend that time reading them books and putting them to bed and not stressing about this. So yeah, I mean, that's been kind of our approach, and certainly very early on, and especially if you have a lot of debt and stuff, it might not be as feasible to outsource everything. But I think if you're selective and figure out what are the things you hate doing the most and hire somebody to do them, then it might free up some time to do some of the things you enjoy that, might refill your cup.
That's so important. We do the same as far as outsourcing. We have a cleaning lady and Our nanny actually does our laundry. We also order groceries because I could spend an hour plus in a grocery store, and I don't want to do that anymore. I'd rather come home and be able to hang out and eat dinner with my kids and kind of spend time like that. I think Aaron really enjoys vacation planning because he's very particular about where we go and what place we stay in. So he actually does all of that fun stuff. And I hate that stuff because I'm so indecisive. I can't decide which place I want to go to. So, Katie, do you guys do anything else?
Yeah, I mean, we outsource, quite a bit, but I just think it's, just putting another thinking cap on is that outsourcing at work is really important too, because, a nurse practitioner changed my life, and having that, and I have a whole team now, which is so beneficial. So I'm not dealing with my Epic in basket late at night or, even on vacation. We talked about going on a 2-week vacation and putting your computer away. And not being able to have to open up Epic to check those messages is so invaluable and truly priceless just for the mental energy and the break. So, I mean, we definitely outsource at home, but I think there's really something to be said about having help, at work as well, and having a good team and good support at work.
That's so true. And I cannot recommend a Scribe more or AI now. You can get them so cheap. So worth it.
Get all the help you can. I have Scribe because they pre-chart, which is also so nice. And then, just getting out the door. I mean, I literally am leaving with the last patient, and so I just try to rush home and get home to start dinner and, just to kind of be home for the homework part and all that kind of stuff too. So.
I think it takes a team, it takes a village to raise kids. It takes a team to be a urologist. It takes a team to be a dad or a mom.
And the other thing is that, so, we talk about, all sorts of aspects of your life, but exercise is really important to me. So I actually am out the door at 5:30 in the morning every day. I mean, I am not here for the morning at all, but that's why, our nanny, my husband gets up at 6:10. He has 20 minutes to kind of be with the kids by himself, but our nanny is here by 6:30. But I just was saying to my husband, because his procedures are more add-on procedures. So he can stay quite late because, a surgical oncologist will call him and say, oh, can you add on a case, whatever. So we kind of just have this understanding where he kind of deals with the morning. But, then I am there, I'm coming home at a certain time, except on my long OR days, my robotic days or whatever it may be. But I'm there, usually home by 4:30 or 5. So I think that's important. So making sure that everyone gets that.
You have to kind of figure out that way to complement one another with respect to your professional duties. We've tried to create our schedules in such a way that we're not having our busiest OR days in the same day. On her big OR day, that's my admin research day. So I have a lot of flexibility then. And on my OR, the night before my OR day, that's her admin time. So we kind of figured out a way where we have a little bit more flexibility that we don't have to both be out the door at super, super early each day. So our au pair usually starts at 7. So usually there's one of us that can kind of linger a little bit if needed, because our kids tend to wake up at the butt crack of dawn every day. That way one can just focus on what they need to do if it's an OR day, and the other can kind of figure out the kids.
What we've done actually, which is kind of funny, and the fact that my admin day has always been on Friday, and my husband was like, I want my admin day on Friday. So we used to have the whole, his admin day used to be on Tuesday. That was my robot day, whatever it may be. But then we had our housekeeper. We actually switched our housekeeper's hours. This is, a person that cleans our toilets and does all that. But she works from 2 to 7. So she works from 2 to 7 p.m. Cleaning. But then, if someone's not home, she can actually watch the kids too. And actually, she's kind of can do both. So she cleans the house just, late afternoon. But then now he switched his admin day to Friday, and it's amazing, So then I'm not, saying nagging him for, can you close this day, because we're going to go away or whatever it may be. But so that works out well for us. Actually, we have the same admin day, which is great.
Katie, we did the same thing. My husband and I just this year matched our admin days too. And it's really nice because that also allows you to sometimes get that time for yourself, or a date night or date lunch, or just that time to connect. That kind of brings me to another really important point. When, you're dealing with kids, you're dealing with work, how do you get time for yourself? How do you get time for your own hobbies, your own friends, or exercise, like you mentioned, or having like a date night? And I think for us, like you mentioned, Katie, it was matching our admin days together. And then on one of those 2 nights, like we have Mondays and Wednesdays is when we have help at night. Sometimes that Wednesday night is like our date night, and we'll go, and sometimes we don't even go anywhere. We just order food to the house, and we just go up in our rooms or downstairs in our basement, shut the door, and we just like decompress and talk and just communicate and just connect, because it's so important when you're at this stage of your life where we're all career, very busy, and you have little kids that you're, really want to spend a lot of time with and be with. So it's really hard managing that time.
Yeah, we tried to schedule some childcare for Friday nights, and that's usually our like date night. So we've tried to do a good job of that. So when the kids were, my kids are still small, but when they were even smaller and they were both napping, which now our older does not nap anymore, that was like my time, our time. So they would go for their nap. I would go to the gym. That was like my Saturday, Sunday thing. And then when the older one stopped napping, it was kind of like came to a screeching halt. So I'm in denial because I'm somebody who historically has liked to sleep. Although as a parent, I've become like a super light, not great sleeper. But I know at some point I just need to like wake up really early and go work out. But I'm currently in my denial phase and not really doing super great about working out. And I think it's important to just like cut yourself some slack, especially early on in your parenting journey, because it is hard. And I'm always like getting upset that like, oh, I don't work out. I need to like get back to my this, get back to my that. But like, you just kind of have to like slowly figure it out and support one another. And we try to, when possible, cover each other's backs from the childcare aspect on weekends, so the other one can go and get a little workout in or do something for themselves. And you just have to be willing to support one another and not prioritize one's needs more than the other, and figure out how to give the other person what they need, if it's a break or just like an hour away from the kids, or why don't you go do some shopping, I'll watch them or whatever.
Yeah, we have a code word, my husband and I, when like we're both losing our mind with one of the kids. Like it's just, you've had a really long day, you've been with them all night, and like when you need to be tagged out. So we have a code word to get tagged out. So if I need him to relieve me, or he's like really losing it, needs some space. But we do the same thing. We try to balance weekends. And we actually, even though we have now like a little gym in our house, we still pay for a gym membership, because the gym we go to provides 3 hours of childcare. So we can like go to the gym, drop the kids off in this awesome kids place where they play rock climb, play in jungle gym, and we can actually go work out, and we can like sit and talk and like have coffee, or like just get a lunch real quick. So it's like, again, it's so important about like what's more important, your time, your money, like how you're going to organize that.
I would work out literally every day.
You guys have given so much amazing, helpful advice. I kind of have one question that I think is a really important one, because I know that I've been really guilty of this before, because my husband, while he's at Indiana University with me, he's a general urologist who's not academic per se. And so, I do a lot more academic tasks, and that requires night meetings and going away for conferences and travel and things like that. But I think it's so important that, making sure that it's clear that one person's practice is not more important than the other person's. So making sure that each partner feels valued and they feel balanced. How do you guys go about doing that?
Ooh, it's tough. I think biggest aspect of our lives, because we're both pretty in the trenches of academic world and academia, would be just knowing each other's schedule and just communicating, So one night I'll have a work dinner, and then the next day I'll have a work dinner. And then if, otherwise we need to get a babysitter, even on a Tuesday sometimes. And we both travel quite a bit, give talks. We both are program directors of fellowships, so having a lot of didactics and other commitments as well, both part of societies. So having two people in academics is quite challenging. Sometimes he'll be on a Zoom meeting and I'll be in a Zoom meeting in a different room. But I just think, having access to each other's calendars, and that goes with, call schedules and all of that too, call schedules, travel, dinners, all of that. So it's challenging, but, and sometimes the ball gets dropped and you just kind of have to roll with the punches, I think. But, and that being said, in terms of whose practice is busier or, not as busy, everyone has their own seasons too of career and academia. So sometimes you may get tapped a little bit more that year to give a talk. But that's more, about the sponsorship that you have and, the relationships that you have. And, one partner may have different sponsorship than the other. But I think that, just the understanding that it's all kind of a roller coaster, and it waxes and wanes, and it's kind of like everyone has their own season of life, and you have to prioritize different things.
I think it's so important, that we not only look at like ourselves and what we can do to promote our own careers, but like how can we help and support our partner to advance themselves. And I think that, it's easy to kind of look at the competing needs of both careers as kind of like, well, I did this thing for my partner and they owe this thing for me, but like it's not a competition. I think like the better way to approach is just to always look at like how can you support that person and how can you help them meet whatever the needs of their career are. So I mean, that's the approach that I've taken, and I think like thankfully I'm blessed that my wife takes the same approach. So we're always just trying to like figure out, just like Katie said, we have to be aware of each other's schedules and the needs are, and we have kind of our family dry erase calendar in the kitchen that we're always updating and making sure everybody knows like, are we going to need the au pair to work late, or are we going to need grandma to come and help out because we both have something, or who's going to kind of be putting the kids to bed this night. So, I mean, I do think it's very much a team effort, and there's got to be times where one is being stretched more thin than the other, and you really need to know when you need to provide additional support. And there's going to be times where both are being stretched. And I think that's where you need to rely on your village, whether it's your nannies and your babysitters or your au pair and your grandmas for us or whatever it is. And I think one of the things that's kind of made it at least a little more fun for us is to try to engage one another and in our respective friend groups for our various meetings and professional colleagues. Like next week, I'm going to Hawaii for an ophthalmology meeting with my wife and both of our kids, and I'm going to be the childcare. And I know like a lot of her colleagues already, and I'm going to go golfing with some ophthalmologists. And like, she comes to our meetings and has gotten to know Helen and a lot of our other colleagues in the field. So I think the work-life balance sometimes can be a little bit of a fallacy. I do believe in more of like the work-life integration. Like you have to kind of be willing to, especially if you're both in medicine and understand that aspect. I think it's maybe a little easier to do so, but like just integrating those aspects of your life, it makes it feel a little bit less painful to like separate one from the other. And then you don't really feel like you're devoting your attention to only one.
This is all so much helpful, amazing, useful information. I feel like we could all sit here and talk for hours about this topic and everything we do. And I think the main take-home messages is that it ain't easy, and there's not going to be this one-size-fits-all. You really need to be flexible. You need to find what do you love, what matters most to you, and where does your time need to go, and really build your life around that. We got to ask lots of questions and communicate with your partner. Communicate with your partner often, touch base, still make that time for each other, and really build your own village. Outsource, ask for help where you need it, and don't give up, because it does get easier. And as you all mentioned, there's seasons, and there's always summer after winter. So thanks so much for everybody listening, and thanks so much, Katie and Peter, for being on the podcast today.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having us. This has been really fun.
Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, rate the podcast 5 stars, and share with a friend.
If you have any questions or comments, DM us at _BackTable on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Twitter.
BackTable is hosted by Aditya Bagrodia
And Jose Silva.
Our audio team is led by Kieran Gannon, with support from
Josh McWhirter,
Aaron Bowles,
Josh Spencer.
Design and digital marketing led by Brian Schmitz.
Social media and PR by Chi Ding.
Administrative support provided by Jamila Kennebrew.
Thanks again for listening, and see you next week.
The content in this podcast is sponsored by Boston Scientific, but does not represent the opinion of Boston Scientific.